getting sworn in. He didn't bring the tenants with him, so he can't really sit there.
This is how you slow stuff down.
You know, when you represent defendants, that's what you always do.
Slow stuff down.
I'm always looking for a way to break into a conversation.
I'm all ready all the time. All right, I guess everybody's ready to get started back now. I appreciate the break very much. We left off on the Public Safety Committee report. Was there any questions or any comments for Commissioner Wheeler? Okay, seeing none. The Purchasing Commission. I wanted to ask who chaired the Purchasing Commission this month? Okay. All right, the Purchasing Committee minutes are in your packet. They're on May the 6th. Steve, I think you're throwing me in the lake, aren't you? Yeah, I know you did. All right. The minutes are on page 156. We do have a resolution from the Purchasing Commission this month, 210509. It's a resolution authorizing the disposition of Washington County surplus property and solid waste equipment on gov deals or recycled. I think that's some things you had, wasn't it, Charlie, that need to go? All right. We have a motion. Motion made by Commissioner Edens. Was that a second, Commissioner Huffine? Discussion or questions? Commissioner Tester?
I'm hoping maybe they can answer this, but I noticed just quickly there was like 109 voting machines that was on the list, and I was kind of curious with all the stuff in the news around the country about audits and all that kind of stuff, if there was any reason that we might need to hang on to those. And then along with that, are we buying a bunch of new ones, or what are we doing?
Thank you so much for your question. If I understand you correctly, you're just asking about the specific 109 voting machines that we have at Ace hardware right now. They're about the size of a Samsonite suitcase. If you guys remember the old blue Samsonite suitcases. They are over a decade old and they haven't been used in over a full election. So that's roughly 8 to 10 years. They have been moved 3 times, but the paperwork has never been done to process them out of the county's inventory. So that is something that I did when I took over this position. Our voting machines that we use right now are in my possession, locked up in my office, and they are not going anywhere. I do not have any plans right now to buy new voting machines unless the government forces us to go paper ballots, and then I will have to buy these machines. We are looking at adding full pads to our current machines because it can make voting hands-free for our Washington County residents. But we can add those without having to update all of our voting machines. And our voting machines do not attach or do not connect to the internet. And trust me, right now we want to keep them that way, guys. So if you have election paranoids. Does that answer the question?
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Questions been called. Madam Clerk, if you'll switch us to the voting screen, please. Go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you announce the vote. 15 yes, resolution passes. All right, the next item is the Rules Committee. Commissioner Tester.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'll find our minutes on page 162. We had some good discussion about a couple of things.
A potential upgrade to our roll call voting software. From what it sounds like, the company is not going to be supporting this anymore pretty soon, the next few months or so. So looking at some options there, and then also we talked for just a few quick minutes about the upcoming redistricting that we're going to have to do later this year. They're running late, I guess because of COVID, on the census data, so we're going to have a real quick turnaround time this fall on redistricting. So, any questions?
How many nights do you think we should mark off for redistricting this fall, Commissioner Tester? About 3 times a week?
Put me on the spot. Sure, that sounds good.
That's what I was
Go
afraid
ahead and put
of.
them down, and then we can always cancel them.
Yeah, it's, it'll be a very interesting time trying to get that redistricting done in a mere 30, 45 days.
Well, they're saying we're going to get the census data in like September, and the election commission has to have their stuff done by November, right?
Actually,
December.
December, isn't it? I just got the packet. Can I speak for just a minute?
Sure.
We are actually working with Kristen.
Can you come to the microphone?
Yeah, if you'll come up to the podium, Dana.
Hi, guys. My name is Dana Jones. If you haven't met me, I think I've met most of you now. And I am the new election administrator for Washington County. Redistricting is on my agenda, in my focus. Not quite there yet, but what we are looking at doing right now is there is an act called Global Earth. And we are working with Chris to lay all the districts on this map. And we're gonna clean up everything before you guys meet, okay? And we can do that without driving the roads this year, which is wonderful. We can drill right down and see a dog in somebody's yard, so we'll know exactly where that line goes. So we will take care of that so that when you guys come and meet, we will have the apps ready to go, and you can lay your lines on there. And we can make sure that we're not going through and splitting up apartment complexes. Because one thing that we have going on right now that is really tough is that we get calls from ladies in the ladies in apartment complexes that they've always gone to vote together all of their life and their neighbors. Well, the line went straight through their apartment complex in 17. So we're gonna help you guys see that, hey, this is where the line's going. You know, and we don't have to drive it there, so we'll be able to actually follow your line, house by house, in a room, instead of having to get in our cars and go and drive. So we'll get to save mileage then too, so. Any questions?
Commissioner Wheeler?
Will that all be done before Chris makes any proposal about redistricting?
I have met with Chris once so far. I will be meeting with Chris next. So I don't know what his order, because I can't speak for Chris. I can just speak for me, and I can tell you that my department will be ready.
Your department is not to make a recommendation on redistricting.
Oh, no, sir, that's not us. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we will know census blocks, you know, and I'll be able to, yes, sir. So,
When we discuss the rules, is with Chris, to be helping us with the actual redistricting.
yes, sir, that is
Just
correct.
making sure that's still in the commission's purview.
Yes, that is correct. You're welcome. I noticed on the schedule.
Gatlinburg Conference, there's a workshop on redistricting, but it doesn't list who is doing it.
I think that's at 1:30 tomorrow.
1 to 2.
1, okay. So everyone's trying to get down there for that.
No, I think it's Wednesday.
Guess I think it is Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah.
Are you leading that discussion, Susan?
All right, thank you, Dana. We appreciate that, and I'm sure it'll be here before we know it. Probably not before Dana knows it. She'll. All right, so mark your calendars for that, for sure. All right, anything else, Commissioner Tester?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next item is the Washington County Budget Committee report. Commissioner Wheeler?
Chairman, it's the time of year I'd like to remind you all how often the budget committee has meetings. So we have our April 21st, April 23rd, May 5th, and May 12th minutes from meetings found on pages 175, 176, 177, and 178 of the packet. We have a resolution for you this evening, including resolution number solid waste municipal funding. This is found on page 187 of your packet. It comes as a recommendation from the committee. I move to approve.
Motion made by Commissioner Wheeler to approve the resolution, seconded by Commissioner Malone. Discussion or questions?
Call for the question.
Question's been called. Madam Clerk, if you'll switch us to the voting screen, go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you'll announce the vote, 15 yes, and the resolution passes. Commissioner Wheeler?
The next resolution is on page 191 of your packet, resolution number 210512, resolution amending fiscal year budget 2020-2021 regarding sheriff department use of asset forfeiture funds. This comes as a recommendation from the committee. I move for its approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Wheeler, seconded by Commissioner Ford to approve the resolution. Discussion or questions?
Call for the question.
Question's been called. Madam Clerk, if you'll switch us to the voting screen, please. Go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you'll announce the vote. 15 yes, and the resolution passes. Commissioner Wheeler?
The next resolution is on page 193 of your packet, resolution number 210513, a resolution amending fiscal year budget 2020-2021 regarding library budget and national historical publications and records commission. This comes as a recommendation from the committee, and I move for its approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Wheeler. Have a second? Second by Commissioner Carriger. Discussion or questions? Question's been called. Madam Clerk, switch us to the voting screen, please. Go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you'll announce the vote. 15 yes, and the resolution passes. Commissioner Wheeler?
The next resolution is on page 195 of your packet, resolution number 210515, resolution amending fiscal year budget 2020-2021 regarding salary reallocation. This comes as a recommendation from the committee, and I move for its approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Wheeler, second by Commissioner Kate to approve the resolution. Discussion or question?
Call for the question.
Question? Madam Clerk, if you'll switch us to the voting screen, please. Go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you'll announce the vote, 15 yes, and the resolution passes. Commissioner Wheeler?
The next resolution was sent to you, and added to the agenda this evening. This is a, supplemental packet resolution 210517, a resolution requesting unclaimed balance of accounts submitted to the state treasurer under unclaimed property act. This comes as a recommendation from the committee, and I move for your approval. Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Wheeler, second by Commissioner Edens to approve the resolution. Discussion or question?
Mr. Chairman, I actually misspoke. This was not a recommendation from the committee. It's not on the agenda, but it's been presented. This is something we do every year to claim this money back from the state. And it's added to the agenda by staff, but I still do. My motion stands. It's not a recommendation. I'm second.
Commissioner Edens, do you continue your second? Yes, thank you. All righty, discussion or questions on this resolution?
Call for the question.
Madam Clerk, switch us to the voting screen, please. Go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you'll announce the vote, 15 yes, and the resolution passes. Commissioner Wheeler, anything else?
That concludes our report.
Thank you. Moving on down to the old business section, several items that we moved into old business from our amended agenda. First one is discussion regarding the Old Town Hardware Building, Resolution 2103-18, that we had taken action on sometime before. One of the things that resolution that I requested us to do was, and requested the mayor to do, was to prepare some, to negotiate with Mr. Sales, and whether it was a lease or purchase agreement, and bring that information back to us. Mayor, do you have, can we go ahead and just do a report on that, since that's the first thing on our list tonight to discuss?
In the resolution that Chairman Matherly just mentioned, the request was for me to negotiate with the owner for four specific things. One was one additional year's term as a lease. Two was an option to extend. Three was a purchase option. And four was that all the payments for leased terms be applied to any purchase price. In discussions with the owner, he came back with a proposal that did not exactly meet the request, but here's the proposal that we're looking at today. First, an outright purchase of the property for $900,000. Option two is a rental agreement for the property for 3 years at $6,000 a month. That would be a triple net lease, which is a little different than what we are currently under, but the $6,000 is also a reduction of the amount that we have been paying in the past, or we did pay in that last term. And at the end of the 3 years, if we wished, we'd have a purchase option for $800,000, or an opportunity to purchase it for $800,000 before the end of the 3-year term. The owner is here. Did I characterize that accurately? Okay. So those are the terms under which we currently have from the owner.
Right.
Oh, yes, yeah, good. Commissioner Wheeler, thank you for reminding me. For those, the lease for 3 years we could purchase the building over a 3-year period if we chose to do that from the owner at no interest. Okay.
Was that at the $900,000 price, Mayor?
Outright purchase at today for $900,000.
All right, so those are the terms that the mayor has spoken with Mr. Sale about, and brought them to us. Thank you for doing that, Mayor. We appreciate you following up with that. Okay. All right, the next item is, was moved from the HEW report. All right. If I can get back to the HEW report. Yes, sir, Commissioner.
We want to do the next one, but we still go back and vote on this.
Well, yeah, I just want to get all these out here for us to discuss, I think, and then we're going to kind of move on from there. Our next one was the Resolution 210516, allocating office space for Washington County's General Welfare Officer and Assistant in the George James Justice Center. And that was, of course, a supplement to the packet. And the last one,
Mr. Chairman, I had just two clarifying questions of the mayor, if I may.
yes, let me get this last one, and you'll be the first on the list, and we're going to back up and have a big discussion. How about that, Commissioner? And the last one was the Resolution 210510, is a resolution memorializing the alternative action recommended by the joint meeting of the County-Owned Property Committee and Election Commission to facilitate funding discussions with respect to the Election Commission offices in the Washington County polling places. So those are the three that we're considering this evening. All of these have some connection to each other. Commissioner Malone, I'll go ahead and start off the discussion with these with you and start clarifying those questions, because I may have a few myself.
Well, and you may have already asked this one, but thank you, and I may have some other questions, but just to the mayor's report, I have two clarifying questions. If we purchase over the installment flow program over 3 years, and this is what the chair may have been asking, is purchase price the $900,000 or the $800,000 if we do it over the 3-year period?
If we purchase it today, it's 900,000. If we lease it for 3 years, at the end of that, it's 800,000.
And then, I think we have an appraisal on this property, is that correct? What was the appraised value of the property?
Well, the appraisal is not current, but when it was made, Dave, you remember the date, I'm not really sure, it's probably been 18 months ago, it was 791,000.
791.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's been a while.
Yes, thank you. All right, Commissioner Carriger, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to make an observation that when the County-Owned Property Committee met with the Election Commission, if you look on our packet pages 100 and 101, we looked at the pros and cons of Mr. Sell's building and other options, and, the conclusion we came to was the option presented in the resolution that came out of our committee. But it kind of summarizes the pros and cons of what we talked about and what we discussed.
All right. Commissioner Jones?
Sorry, I'm just drew a blank. I question this process of putting these two decisions side by side. I think we know that if we choose for Mr. France to go into the Justice Center, then the Election Commission has another alternative space, but we haven't really talked much about what happens if the Election Commission comes into the Justice Center. Where does Mr. France go? This use of space is, at least in my experience working in various offices and going different places, very dynamic. You have to know the people and their space needs and what all's going on with them. And I don't really like the idea of having a public meeting where you choose a winner and somebody else loses a space. So I'd really like to know kind of what the options are, so we can maybe walk out of here feeling like everyone wins because somebody gets some space here and then somebody else that really would work well for that person gets some space there. And this conversation about Mr. France and his work came up in the context of environmental cleanup discussion in Hugh. And at least in my experience, we've been you all know, we've been working very hard to clean that process up and Commission's role in that process. And you all know that Ms. Wilkinson and Ms. Stutz have stepped up to help make that process work better. But when we were discussing this in Hugh, I was expressing concerns that there's still trouble coordinating around environmental cleanup and environmental court and getting the information to the Hugh committee. And that's when it came up, like, well, you know, what's going on with the space, what's going on with Mr. France? And Mayor Grandy, I'd really like to hear from you about, you know, what you know about Mr. France's help, as well as where you think his work might happen here or somewhere else to make him really effective and bring that whole team of people that do environmental cleanup and court to a better communication and teamwork place, so that we can get that piece cleaned up. I think that's the last frontier for environmental cleanup and court.
Well, I think you stated very accurately that the process is different today than it was, and it's, I think in fairness, probably still evolving to try to get, you know, get it dialed in and make it efficient. One of the questions that I've struggled with really for the last 8 months, this commission funded environmental cleanup at a much higher level back in September. And in addition to that, funded a position to assist Mr. France. And that's a position that we had been discussing for, you know, quite a while. You may recall that in October, Mr. France took a 90-day leave of absence for health reasons. So he wasn't really in pocket during the time that Mr. France was, you know, out for the surgery. Scott Chapman essentially ran the calls. I think he even appeared in environmental court for some cases that had already been planned, that Bobby France had worked prior, and that seemed to go pretty well. We were averaging somewhere around 2 calls a week on questions and potential sites to look at, so it was manageable. Obviously, in January, February, most of March, the growing season really hasn't gotten going, so there's not a whole lot of environmental cleanup work. Again, you know, just really several calls a week as Bobby returned. So in looking at bringing someone on to support Bobby, I mean, I've been trying to evaluate really since we started monitoring specific calls per day, per week, the first of last July to current. Today we have 43 cases that are in some state of either being fixed or being worked. So in 10 months, that's an average of 4.3, you know, issues. So this position was set at $44,000 plus benefit. So there's 2 questions that I've been trying to work through. One is the demand on an assistant, and 2, supervision of that person. You know, both are really very important. And one of the reasons that we looked at the possibility of Mr. France going to space over in the Justice Center was that Jerry Story, our veteran service officer, has asked for help. And the thought for a while was whether or not they might share a person to be more efficient. And of course, Mr. Story is in the office almost all the time and would be able to supervise. Mr. France, on the other hand, is on the road most of the time. And so bringing somebody in who may or may not require training, depending on their level of experience in the past, who's going to train the person and who's going to supervise the individual, and what's the workload. And at a meeting really just last week, we were discussing it with our legal team, and their expectation, it's about 20 hours a week. So a person, that's probably going to cost the county maybe $65,000 or so, including benefits. We need to find something else for them to do for the balance of their time. I don't have a proposal. If this person is located on our second floor, I have some supervisory capacity, but there's still a lot of questions around it, and I just haven't felt comfortable pulling the trigger on that assistant. In terms of process change, one of the things that has changed, and Allison, you can just correct me if I'm mischaracterizing this, but we've looked at, y'all have looked at bringing the legal folks in on a little sooner than was done in the past in order for our legal team to try to work with individuals and coach them into cleaning up their own properties before we go to court and wind up with the judgment and that sort of thing. And then, looking at county expense for the property cleanups. But once the legal team has it, it's theirs. It doesn't go back to anyone else, other than just a report to. Did I get that? Is that?
Well, just one nuance I would change is that the process and procedure that the county attorney's office recommended is the same process and procedure that was in place in writing. And the resolution had always contemplated that the enforcement be with the HEW committee. So it's just the authority to file a lawsuit. What the mayor's talking about coming in earlier, it was simply that once it's going to go to a request for a lawsuit, be enforced through court, is that we the county, provide to citizens the opportunity to take one last chance at it before they incur court costs. So it's just so that you know, it's not that the legal team has said they'd like to come in sooner. It is that it was a way to give the citizens one more chance to avoid several $100s in fees, because if they're going to pay that money, then why not hire someone to do the work, that we were focused on doing the work. So I think it's same but different. I hope that helps.
Yep, no, that's great, and that's exactly correct. But the result is that, once it's passed to legal, that's where it's living. And, until it's resolved, either the property is cleaned up or we wind up in going to court and incurring the court costs and getting the judgment for cleanup. So, again, what does the assistant do? I mean, one of the things that, other than taking inbound phone calls, we send 2 letters. One letter asking, telling the folks that their property has been identified in need of cleanup, and here's what needs to happen. Get it done, or more action will take place. We send a second letter. After that, that's when our, our legal folks step in and try to give one last strong encouragement for folks to clean up their own property before we set aside them into court. So again, an individual assistant, Bobby, would essentially be responsible for sending 1 or 2 correspondences, depending on the result of the first one. And again, at the pace we are taking inbound calls, we anticipate that to be about maybe a 20-hour-a-week position.
Commissioner Edens?
I just have a question. I'm a little bit confused. We talked in the last few meeting that it had been 13 months since this commission approved a resolution for you to hire a full-time employee with Mr. France. I don't recall it being an office employee or a phone operator. I recall it being a full-time employee that he stated to you that he needed help in the field with, that they could answer the phones if they wanted to, but we approved a full-time employee. We approved office space. We brought it to full commission. The full commission approved the same thing. It passed the full commission for a full-time employee and office space. Mr. Francis asked continually Where's my help? What about my help? What about my help? We've asked, and, I mean, I think I've heard, well, I'm hearing the same thing tonight, we're working on it. We've been working on it for 13 months, but the commission approved it that long ago. I don't understand why we haven't hired the employee that the commission approved. And I don't, up until last month's meeting, he had shared with the committee that he'd already not bought, but he'd already picked out office furniture for the space. And then I went to my 4 o'clock meeting, and we were asked to vote on giving someone else the space, the exact same space. So, I mean, there may be something I'm missing or something I don't understand, or maybe out of the loop somewhere, but I'd like to understand that.
Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, if I may, in deference to Commissioner Edens, the number of 13 months has been bannered about, but that resolution passed September of 2020. And so it did pass, but ironically, it only funded a position and it never actually directed anybody to be hired. And it was actually it was a component of a number of other budgetary transitions, all related to environmental court. But I think it's inaccurate to say it was 13 months ago. It didn't actually direct the mayor to hire anybody, and it certainly didn't address office space. Certainly our county attorney can correct me, but I don't believe this commission as a body has ever directed office space for Mr. France.
I didn't say that.
Oh, actually, I thought you did.
I did not. I said that Mr. France stated to the Q that he and the mayor had looked at office space and that he had gotten to the point where he had been allowed to order furniture for said office space. And is there anything about the commission being involved in that?
I stand corrected. I had understood you were indicating that that resolution addressed all of those items.
And I'm indicating what goes on in the queue, what questions and answers come out of the queue, okay? So that clarifies that one. And as far as hiring someone, I didn't say the commission hired someone.
Oh. All right, all right.
I just said it was voted on and normally
Let's,
by the party in charge.
It's not what the resolution.
Let's move on here just a minute. Commissioner Wheeler, you got your hand up?
Yes, sir. Before we get too far into space for Mr. Francis' office, and I want to make sure I say, I don't think we're picking winners and losers in office space. It's not, we don't need to be looking at it as picking winners and losers. And in view, when we took this up, I made the motion, but I also said that we needed to look at the election commission issue first. And I offered, when I made the motion, put it behind that issue. And I think that's exactly what we should do tonight, is put it behind that issue, because if the election commission is going in that space, it becomes a moot point. And nobody, I never did and did not do, I did not argue with you that that issue should be decided before the issue by the election commission. But with that said, I want to talk about the election commission for a minute. I think this matter became a little easier for me to look at the County Owned Property Committee. At the County Owned Property Committee, the mayor was not called on to explain the situation with the sales agreement until after a motion was made in a second to go into the route. At that point, the chairman asked the mayor for his opinion on it, and the mayor took the opportunity to go into what he had negotiated with Mr. Sale, which I really appreciated sitting in the audience, because until that point, we didn't know what the terms were. But the other thing the mayor talked about was what it was going to cost overall to get both ideas. And with the $900,000 purchase price and a generous $400,000 build out, which is more than what was proposed back 10 months ago, but again, what's happened in 10 months for materials. Budget committee's been using 30% on a number of things, 30% higher than what it was before. With respect to the build out or building, at that point, we were looking at a 5,500 square foot building to put both the early voting and the offices in it. And he indicated that to do that was going to be in the 1.5 million range. So there's close, okay? Difference, primary difference being the materials made of and 5,500 square feet versus 10,000 square feet. So, since then, I went up to a number of us have done, the meeting at the electrical office. And it indicated to me that really that did not want to add more than 2,500 square feet. I think several of us have been told at one point that this would just be a short-term move in the justice center. And I've been told now by Ms. Jones, that is not the case. They would propose permanently moving in to the justice center and only building a 2,500 square foot building. Of course, that would bring the number down. Personally, I'm not in favor of that. I think, and she's also proposing a metal building. And I do not think that we're going in the right direction in building a metal building, 2,500 square foot metal building, to sit out here in front of this multi-million-dollar justice center in the front yard. I know Mayor James used to tell several of us, when you get the chance, buy those two buildings out there and get rid of them. Have that be open space out there. But we could choose to go that route and put a metal building in the front yard. You can tell I'm not in favor of that, obviously. But if we were building anything, I think the mayor has the right idea to build something that's brick and mortar and build it big enough to put them out there. Now, let me tell you why I think that. One of the things, this is just, I'll talk about several things, but one of the things is the storage unit that they're going to utilize. That's not, it is currently being used for storage. All four client attorney consultation rooms on that hallway have been converted and are no longer available for client attorney conversations. That's a criminal courtroom that sits down there at the end of that hallway. Three of them, one was stated as absolute storage for clerks, and they don't have storage over there. Storage is an issue that perhaps one of the larger buildings can help with. Two and three were taken up when the DA's office moved out. They needed some space where they could meet with witnesses and prepare and whatnot, and files and storage, because they're off-site now, so they've taken one. Public defender's always been off-site. They've got a meeting room there where they can meet and prepare and deal with court. These are the busiest courtrooms in this courthouse. It's not like up here, where up here you might go half the day and there's nobody up here. Those courtrooms are busy almost all the time. One of the primary fundamental principles in the law is that a client has the right to talk to their attorney, and that is confidential and privileged. When we built this courthouse, we built client conference rooms for that purpose. I would argue they are really the only rooms in the building that are relegated from the public, period. That's why, when we get to looking for space and arguing over space in this building, nobody's sticking up for them. The clerk's got to have space, and I get that. Judges aren't, they're back in the back. They're not out there in the front. So it's not as big a deal to them to put, this came up in budget because they're talking about putting a video conferencing. And I raised the issue, is that going to mean people are not going to be comfortable talking to their lawyer because they don't know if that video equipment's on? So they're looking at that. Maybe some of the courtroom or conference rooms would have it, some with it. But I'm not in favor of taking up another conference room. And I think that one should be restored. There, again, it is being used for very few items right now. And I think those ought to be moved out and restored to that conference room. Next to the offices themselves, it's small, there's small offices, one bathroom, but it's all the space we got in this justice center. So you have one court program that comes back in here, and you have to have office space. We could end up having to look at where our courtroom main side is over here, to build on top of the downstairs courtroom, and turn it into office space, which limits every building in the courtroom, and also limits the end of ability to have this building effect. So I think that, I also took the opportunity last week to go down there and look, that every one of those rooms, every single one of those rooms has stuff in it. And people in and out of it. They're utilizing that, DCTI is, to stage computer work for the whole county. So if you're doing computers over in the courthouse, they're putting them together here and taking them over there. So So they are utilizing it. It's not, is that the highest and best use? No, but it is being used. It's not just sitting empty. So for that reason, I think what we need to do is look, nobody has suggested, I don't think one single commissioner has suggested that we not do something about their office space, and obviously we need to do something about early voting. I'm also concerned that the early voting site is not adequate, that's been identified. There was no discussion at the county property, I don't believe, unless I missed it, about the parking. But the Jonesboro was asked about the parking. I have not seen the written response, but I have been made aware that they did not favor the heritage over Ace Hardware building. I would suggest that we need to, it's been suggested today, to a member of this commission, at least I've been told that after another party, that early voting might be taken away from Jonesboro and the blame laid at the county commission's feet. And that's probably where it belongs. If we don't secure a spot for early voting, it's our fault, not the election commission's fault. We let go of the space we have, and this county commission is the one responsible for that. We didn't make a decision, but we have the responsibility under the law. We let that space go. We've not secured a long-term lease on the Ace Hardware building, which we could have done, but we kept them at bay for so long about what we're going to do, that they're no longer willing to do that in terms of the before. And I understand that. I don't, there's maybe some that will fault them for that, but I understand they're ready to either just cut back, let's go. So, for that reason, this can continue to be debated, but I'm going to make a motion that we accept the $900,000 purchase price and purchase this and accept the $300,000 year no interest term. So I've made that as a motion.
I'll second.
Motion made by Commissioner Wheeler, seconded by Commissioner Edens. Commissioner Carriger?
Mr. Chairman, a point of order, we did get a report, it's in our packet, page 102, 205 from Chief of Police Street about the parking. And, I think it just seems a little out of order that we've got a recommendation from the Election Commission that we're ignoring. And it looks to me like that ought to be of some importance. They're the ones who have to run the office. And so, I think to me, you've got two choices. You got Commissioner Wheeler's motion to go with the Ace Hardware, and if that passes, then that's it. If it fails, then we go back to Resolution 210510, which was the recommendation from the County Property Committee in cooperation and with the input from the County Election Commission. So, I think Commissioner Wheeler's bringing it to a head. We need to vote. We're going to vote one way or the other, so let's make a decision tonight.
Commissioner Davenport?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this, we've talked about the building across the street. I'll make one thing clear, I didn't support that. I didn't support that for any reasons other than I didn't think it was the best use of taxpayer money. That was my reasoning. Okay? The Election Commission has come up with a better idea at a lower cost and has talked about things like where we rank in voting across the state and what it cost us to vote versus everybody in the state, and one of them being our mirror county, in my opinion, which is Sullivan County. And the plan looks to me to be very solid, but I want to make it very clear. When I first run for office, I said I was here to support the people that were in office. I call it our department heads, whether it be our highway superintendent or any of our other folks, all right? And if this is not the right decision, and we lose some kind of early voting, make no bones about it. That's on the voting commission, not the county commission. That's on the election commission, not the county commission.
That's their responsibility. And it's our responsibility to vote it up or down, okay? And I appreciate your time that you took with me and to step through the whole process and answered any question I had. And we talked about security that we haven't talked about here. We talk about the numbers and how many people voted last time, and that was huge. Kingsport just had an election the other day, and it was about 10%, I believe, voting. Okay, I don't know if we'll see those numbers again. However, security is still an issue. And our election commission says that the plan that they have now puts us in a more secure position to protect our citizens' votes. So therefore, that's the way I'm looking, and that's the way I'm supporting. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, would it be proper to hear from the Election Commission?
We have a motion and second on the floor right now.
Okay.
And I do have several to speak, Commissioner Carriger.
Okay.
Commissioner Malone, go ahead and
Well, just an observation, I mean, based on Commissioner Wheeler's remarks, it sounds as if maybe we shouldn't move anybody into the space at the Justice Center, and perhaps there's a higher and better use of that office space rather than for environmental work or the Election Commission. I mean, but it seemed to be that was what you were arguing. But from a point of order standpoint, we have two resolutions already in the package. It would seem that we would vote on those before entertaining yet another resolution.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, there's a motion and a second on the floor.
Well,
I guess I've kind of held this open for discussion, is the reason that, I guess the discussion now is we're hearing that you know, they want to vote on the resolution and not the motion. I guess that's their,
well, just an observation, based on my math, that's 14%. I mean, we hear about, everybody argues about being fiscal conservatives, but what the motion is a 14% increase over the appraisal we have that I think the mayor said was 18 months old. If we buy the building, I certainly wouldn't suggest we buy it at $900,000. I mean, it's hard to argue fiscal conservatism when you're going to say, let's pay significantly more than the appraised value would have in file. Now, could it have changed in 18 months? Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. I'm not the person.
Commissioner Williams?
About 14%.
Commissioner Williams has the floor. Commissioner Williams?
Maybe out of order, but I think sequentially, we ought to hear them, the Election Commission, verbalize what they want before we turn down Commissioner Wheeler's motion. Why do we have to, why can't we hear from them? It doesn't make any sense.
We have to eliminate one of the resolutions. Commissioner Tester?
I just wanted to point out, in terms of a point of order, I think the attorney needs to look for a minute or two at Rule 8A, which talks about how resolutions all have to be written. And I'm not saying we can't vote on your motion, but I just think that somebody smarter than me needs to consider that in terms of the order that we're doing all this.
I think we better be careful about written resolutions on anything we can vote on.
Well, I didn't say anything that we can vote on, but that rule specifically spells out certain things, and one of them says approval of contracts. And approving purchasing something sounds like I'm pretty close to that.
Approval of contracts?
I mean, that's why I'm asking Allison to look at it
Yeah,
for a
that
minute or
sounds
two.
good to me. Allison, would you rule on that for us? Commissioner Wheeler?
I would keep in mind, if you want to go that route, that we approve contracts all the time that you tell the mayor to negotiate the terms on. So if we go that route, don't expect any other contracts to go through here that we say the mayor needs to negotiate the terms on, because I don't think that's the spirit of the rule. We are acting, in my opinion, on a resolution. It's the oldest of the resolutions. It was under old business, so I would point that out as well. I have no objection hearing from anybody.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think that before you look at, there is a resolution. You do have a resolution from March, which is 210318. But I would suggest that you consider that what's in front of you is a motion. There's a motion on the floor, and there are three basic steps by which a motion is considered, and I know you probably have your rules with you, Commissioner Custer. That's Rule 6, and the members debate the motion unless no member claims the floor for that purpose. The chair puts the question, that is, puts it to a vote, and the chair announces the result. So there is a pending motion on the floor, and I would suggest that those are the three steps that are relevant to how it be considered. Is that?
Yes, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Huffine?
So, based upon that, I think we're still in discussion mode at this point.
Yes.
And if I may, a lot of thought gone into this, and I'm not sure, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the Election Commission, and we have a new Election Commission that worked diligently, quickly to bring something to us. We also have some history of something that previously worked. But I really question, are we being really short-sighted here? Are we looking long-term? So I'll start with Ace Hardware. We buy it for $900,000, and we can discuss, is that fair market? I think as a commission, it's difficult to vote on a purchase price on an 18-month-old appraisal, knowing there's been a lot of dynamics happen in 18 months. I'm not going to go out and buy a piece of property based on an 18-month-old appraisal when a lot of things have changed. That's just me. Oh, what he conservative, I think. But if we do buy it at that and remodel, and we've got 1.5, 1.4, whatever that figure is, how long does that last us? What's the condition of the building? Is that 1.5 total remodel of it? Will that last us 10 years? Will it last us 5 years? I don't know the answer to that question. I will tell you that's some answers I'd like to have. And I'm not a structural engineer, so I can't even guess at those. No offense toward the property. I just don't know. And how does it suit the county? I'll flip then over to the Justice Center. I'll agree with Commissioner Wheeler. I think my general first understanding that the election staff moving in there was temporary. But at the same time, I've not seen any long-term plan come from the Election Commission. What are we going to do? I suspect 3 years from now, the Justice Center is going to need that space, if not before. Or we're going to be in a space crunch. So I think that's my concern. Are we looking 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? Or are we really looking 5 years, 10 years? We ask the school board to bring us some long-term plans. Are we not holding ourselves responsible for the same thing? We need long-term plans. Shouldn't the Election Commission bring us long-term plans as well? That's documented, that we have the data? That's what's missing to me on both of these. I don't have all the details. I can't vote on either one of them and tell you and walk out that door and tell you I made an informed, intelligent decision. If I'm missing something, please let me know what I'm missing. But that's sort of the questions I've got that I don't have answers to, and I'm looking for answers. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
I think some of why we looked super long-term is because we're always thinking the election's around the corner and we have to make good decisions. So there's this pressure. And one of the things we've all been very concerned about is the commission's current space and how difficult it is for them to operate in that current space. And we're down to, them having to run elections in the next, preparing to run elections and doing all this work with redistricting, et cetera, within the next several months. How soon do you all think we could get that Ace Hardware building repurposed and move offices? I just know that right now, having any work done is incredibly difficult. The timelines are very long, and I just feel like we're ill-prepared to move them in a timely manner, their offices, where they need to do the work to redistrict, to prepare for the next elections in time. So that's the short-term vision, and that's enough for me to feel very uncomfortable. If we want to pull off strong elections in Washington County, we need to get them settled in some space where they can start operating as soon as possible. If it turns out that it's disruptive to the Justice Center, I'm all ears about another plan. We can continue to sort that out. But for now, that's a strategy I feel very comfortable with.
Commissioner Whedon?
I understand what you're saying, and I think we would all probably like to have had a little more information, but we have been looking at this for 2 years, and I know you've not been with us that long. I've taken the time to talk to one of my best friends as a developer. We've talked about it numerous times, and when talking about it today, when I went over those numbers from the mayor, his comment was, well, that one's a no-brainer. You've got, same amount of money for double the space, relatively the same amount of money for double the space, and he indicated he did not think the difference between the way the building's built as far as your long-term cost was going to be, that. He said what he would be doing is taking the double the space. But that's, so I think we've had time to look at that individually, talk to whoever we wanted to about metal buildings versus block and mortar buildings. We've had time to hash through. I would venture to guess that all but maybe 2 or 3 of us have spent a good bit of time in the Election Commission office and hearing what their proposal was. I don't consider this, and I hope they don't, disrespectful to make this motion, because we have heard, we've meshed through and talked with them, not just among ourselves, but with them about the different options. But and as far as space, I think the mayor has indicated about 9 months to get space ready to go in that building, but early voting is ready to go now. We did it already. And we've run elections out of where they are. They're going to have to stay there. There'd be renovations. The renovations, by the way, I'm assuming you all got the same memo that I got tonight when I walked in that talks about office renovation, $15,000. That was apparently done today. They did talk to the architect. I talked to the architect after they did. My understanding was he did give a $50,000, but that was just, he also says in his email, which he sent a copy of to Chairman Madley and I, that he could not give us a cost because he has to get in the building before he could give us a cost on renovations. The $50,000 was just in response to what was proposed here, the $15,000. He said, no way, it's going to be a lot higher than that. But I think he did throw out a $50,000. But he did say, that is not my figure, and he won't stand by it, and he put that in writing. So I think that's where, in response to what you're saying, and Commissioner Jones.
Now, you all have both got to speak, so I get to speak just a moment. And I'm just saying, I want to point a few things out. I'm kind of feeling a little bit like Commissioner Huffine tonight. I've had the opportunity to talk to Ms. Jones, and I know she's trying to do a great job for the Election Commission. I feel like that when we start talking about the Election Commission and the Justice Center, there's some different feelings here in the Justice Center. I think, number one, it's called the Justice Center. And I think that when they designed this building, they really had a lot of use for court here. And then we even designed an extra place for court upstairs. And clearly, there's fewer storage areas here than we had back when we were in Johnson City. One of the things in talking to Ms. Jones today is when I spoke to her about the architect, I did tell her that it might be a good idea to go see Mr. Ross, since he is the architect that built this building, and he knew the ins and outs, and he could tell you whether you could cut a door, tear down a wall. So back several years ago, we tried to remodel that office for Attorney General Clark at that time. And I know we tried everything we could, and one of the things we did was want to put in a door. So that concerned me a bit, that Ken hadn't had an opportunity to take a look at that. She did get in to see him today, and he could do us a full report, but it'd be something I'd like for him to see. I'd also like those are the people that weigh in the security on this building, not the county commission. They just report to us when they need funding. So those are some of the things I think that we're, just a few things that we're lacking on. I would like to hear from the sheriff. He's on that committee. Chancellor Rambo is the chairman of the Courthouse Security Committee. I mean, there's some things, there's some court issues that I'd like to know. But, there again, I feel like Commissioner Huffine a little bit. Costs are somewhat, we don't know what those are. And does it hurt us to wait 30 days? Yes, apparently it does. I asked myself that question today, and I kept saying, why does it hurt to wait 30 days to get all this information and bring enough information back? Well, the reason we're in such a bind on it is because we have set Mr. Sell-off on the Ace Hardware building so long, he just wants an answer. So I guess that's why we're here tonight. And I guess we'll go down this list, and what fails, fails, and what's here, it's here. And if nothing passes, we'll just keep doing the same thing that we're doing today. And Commissioner Davenport, I want to answer your question, what you talked about is it our job to provide a building, or I don't know how you said that, but that brought something back to my mind. Yes, it is our job. It is. As far as a building was to go, we have to provide them some kind of building to have an election in. And I didn't know how you said that, but. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Commissioner Carriger, I think I can recognize you. Is anyone not spoken? I have to make sure that everyone that has an opportunity to speak, that wants to speak on this issue. Commissioner Carriger, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just wish to make two points. One, how are we going to explain to the taxpayers, rather than spending $107,000 over 4 years to vote at the Heritage, we're going to spend $1.3 million, probably more than that, to vote at Ace Hardware. And the second point, I visited a lot of these poll workers during the last election, and I tell you what, we've got a lot of fast drivers going up and down 11E. I really felt for the safety of those people out there working the polls, and the voters too. I think the sheriff could do well to put radar out there. There's a lot of speeders that go up and down that road, and that's my last point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think that'd be the town of Jonesboro, out there, Commissioner, but I'll let the sheriff know. You're right. Commissioner Huffine, were you,
No, I'm good, thank you.
okay. Commissioner Jones?
I'm good.
Okay.
No, quick.
Questions have been called. The motion at this point is the purchase of the Ace Hardware Building for 3 years at the $900,000 with 0% interest. Is that correct, Mayor? Madam Clerk, if you will switch us to the voting screen, please. Seven yes. 8 no. And the motion fails.
Mr. Chairman, can we at this time talk about resolution number 210510?
Yes.
Maybe give us some direction.
Can you make a motion on that one?
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Be a resolution memorializing an alternative action recommended by the joint meeting of the County-Owned Property Committee and the County Election Commission to facilitate funding decisions with respect to the Election Commission offices and Washington County polling places. We have a motion. Who is the second on that? Second by Commissioner Fitzgerald. We have a motion and second. Any questions or discussion? Huh? I'm sorry. Oh, Commissioner Carrier. Commissioner Fitzgerald. Questions have been
I
called.
think there's some confusion, but it's on page 2 of 5, and it's the I, county-owned property, A, and it's resolution 210510.
That was the one I thought that was the one I read, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. There seemed to be a little confusion there.
Oh, it's Resolution 210510 is a resolution memorializing the alternative action recommended by the joint meeting of the County-Owned Property Committee and County Election Commission to facilitate funding decisions with respect to the Election Commission offices in Washington County polling places. That's the one we're voting on. Is there any discussion, questions?
Call for the question.
Question's been called. Madam Clerk, switch us to the voting screen, please. Go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, announce the vote, please. Eleven yes, 10 yes, 5 no, and the resolution passes.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes, sir, thank you. Hold on just a minute. Our attorney has pointed something out.
This is the one I mentioned to you earlier, the Heritage one, is this current resolution, this past resolution for the one from February, March, April, May.
Okay. Well, let's let our attorney discuss this one item with us here, because if I do, I'm going to mess it up, so.
My question is just a point of clarification. The resolution that you approved in March 210318 was a budget amendment, and so you had rent for February, March, April, and May. So just point of clarification, if there's any action to be taken or intention to be described, I think that that would help our Director of Accounts and Budgets.
Commissioner Wheeler?
To address that, that resolution passed then.
Correct.
So My understanding is that rent, and I understood this after you and I talked this afternoon, but I spoke to Mr. Sell, who let me to check on it, and he said that that rent had been paid, which would be appropriate because the resolution passed.
It really doesn't impact this office any until a lease extension was in place. I mean, we had a lease that expired, and then until something new was negotiated, regardless of what was budgeted, until it was documented, you know, you could budget for rental payments and never execute a lease, and you'll never spend those rental payments you're supposed to budget.
Apparently, you all have paid.
I'll double check that, but not my knowledge.
Well, we used the building during that time period. I think that was the intent of the commission, was to pass that. You know, Lord knows we, you know, the man waited on us for how long. I think we intended to pay. If that wasn't done, I would recommend we suggest.
Well, to the extent there's holdover rent, you're exactly right. That could be true, but it wasn't something that was looked at. It would be something that I'm not approving payment of rent anyway.
We still have equipment in that building, don't we, today? Yeah. So, I just,
So that needs to probably be gotten out by the end of the month, so we can end the rent.
I think part of that may have been what we're getting rid of anyway on this, I assume, but. So, that's what we're getting rid of. Yeah, that's what I thought it would be. Yeah, that's what's going on Gov Deals, so. But I would probably get it out of there as soon as possible. Will he be paid through the end of this month, Mitch? Is that how that will be?
This is gonna be something that the county attorney and I'll have to discuss, because to my knowledge, we haven't received a rental invoice.
So he just needs to invoice you, is what you're telling me?
I'm not even gonna touch that one, Mr. Chairman, until confer with the county attorney.
We have to pay report back at the next meeting, whether or not the rent's been paid through us getting it out. And then we can always take it up after that. If it hasn't been, we can address that then.
Yes. Gary, will you make sure that stuff is out of that building?
Chairman, Wednesday, I've already talked to the sheriff's office, prisoners going to help us unload it. And either way, but we need to get stuff out of there.
Awesome.
Gov Deals, so Wednesday at 10 o'clock.
That'd be great. That'll be good. That way Mitch and the attorney can get on settling up with Mr. Sale, and I'm sure he's ready to get his building marketed as quick as possible. I know he's got some people interested in it.
Thank you. The question came up in the Budget Committee. So just so that we understand interpreting the current resolution and the impact on 2103-18, and I'll work with Mitch to ensure that even as a holdover under the past lease, I think without any kind of negotiation of new terms, that's what I'm hearing, that's the expectation from the commission. There's a holdover provision, and I have the lease with me if anybody has any questions. I just need to know what to do with this past resolution and the impact of the two of them. So I think I've got that. Thank you.
All right. All right, if there's nothing else to dispose of, we still have one more resolution to consider.
Notary.
Under old business. And that is a relocation of our welfare officer, Washington County, into the assistant, and his assistant in the George J. Justice Center. So that kind of makes it,
There's no motion for approval, Mr. Chairman. I don't think it's a dead issue.
I do too. Could we table that and just send it away off my agenda, you think, or just?
It dies for lack of a motion.
If it dies for lack of a motion, I'm good. I'm calling for the last motion on this one. It's dead. All right, that'll take care of that.
Notaries.
All right. We get back here on the last page of our amended agenda. It has been an interesting agenda, I'll tell you that. All right, Resolution 210514 is a resolution approving the election of notaries public for appointment or reappointment for Washington County, Tennessee.
Move for approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Carriger to approve the resolution. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Malone. All in favor of that motion and second? Go ahead and switch the voting screen. Cast your vote, lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you'll announce the vote, 15 yes, and the resolution passes. Have no new business to report tonight. But we do have the cutoff date and time for next month's County Commission agenda is Thursday, June 17th. Don't be fooled, though, we have several commission meetings next month.
Can I ask something about next month's meeting while we're all here?
Absolutely.
I would like to request now that we invite Brightridge to come and explain to us the process that got this mess that we're dealing with done.
Yes, sir.
Also, explain to us what's going to happen up here tomorrow. So I tell you, I feel like definitely the wool is full of my eyes. I had no idea. I would never vote into that. And Brightridge had to know what was going on. Why wasn't it before? So
Yes, we sure will.
I'd like to ask them also our members of the board to be appointed Brightridge.
Okay. Susan, would you make sure we get that done? I know me and Susan had discussed that a little bit this past time. One of the things, though, to remember, next month we have several meetings, so we'll need some help. All right, we've got a motion to adjourn. All in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign.